Hello, welcome to the Revolver Fan First podcast, where we go deep with artists on their history as a fan. I'm your host, Christina Rowatt, and today we have Misha Mansoor of Periphery, which is exciting. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I bring up the arms, you know. That's what the hell is
so
up.
Excited.
Boom.
So excited.
So yeah, just it's a niche reference, and I'm down with it. So we always ask the first question. Who was the same first question? Who was the first artist you put on a pedestal?
Ooh, probably Michael Jackson.
Yeah. What drew you to him?
I don't know. It's pretty undeniable, right? Didn't everyone love literally everyone loved Michael Jackson? This is when I was like 8. So this would have been like 1935, 1936. I don't know, pretty old. But
yeah.
Right. But like I think I was listening to like Thriller. It's probably around the time like Dangerous was out.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was like the biggest thing in the world. I swear he was bigger than Coca-Cola, as they say, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Everything. The voice, the rhythm, the beats, everything. I mean, that music still holds up. That music's still great.
It totally is. Well, so good songwriting's timeless, right?
Yeah, it really is. And like that, I feel like there was a lot of like musicianship shining through then. Like listening back, I'm like, man, there's some like kind of like I think it's in Jam. There's like this little keyboard break that's like really like kind of technical, you know, that part. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of, I probably thought it was cool back then, but now I'm like, wow, they're sprinkling some cool stuff. And obviously the fact that he was big made him even more on a pedestal. It's like, I remember really wanting to meet him. Probably a great thing I didn't. We don't need to go there, but you know.
We don't. Let's.
You know, I was in the target range right there. I mean, I probably would have been honored at the time, so I would have loved to have a sleepover. But in hindsight, maybe not, you know?
Hindsight, maybe not.
Maybe not.
I shouldn't laugh. It's deeply inappropriate that I'm laughing about.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Jesus. I'm messed up as a human being, you know.
Aren't we all?
But we're talking about art. We're talking about art separate to the artist, I think, in this context. And
we are 100% separating the art from the artist.
Did you ever like master the dance moves?
No, I have no aptitude to dance. I'm completely incapable of dancing, and it was one of those things where it's interesting you say that because I never, as much as I enjoyed it, sometimes like when you enjoy something, you'll try to emulate it, but like that's something I just enjoyed as a thing. It's like, it's very clear he was like this like insane dancer, but it never drew me to like the dance. It was just the music. I really loved the sound. I think it's interesting to like recognize these things, you know, now that like I produce bands and record. Before I had the terminology, I think I was still drawn to certain sounds. I didn't know why. I would just probably say it sounded cool or it sounded good, but like there was something about the aesthetic that I really liked. And then listening back now, I'm like, man, these albums sound great, you know? So there's obviously something I was hearing there that I was very drawn to.
Yeah, well, it's the whole package sometimes. And when you get right down to it, the core of the package. Who was the first artist you were starstruck by when you met them? Like who did you feel like I lost the words? Mine was PJ Harvey. I met PJ Harvey once and I was like, I don't have anything cool enough to say to you. Like I have
to have met them. I remember like feeling distinctly starstruck when I first saw Dream Theater and saw John Petrucci walk on stage. I had like a feeling. I was always all the way at the back. That was a very distinct feeling. Yeah. I was like kind of like, oh wow, I'm starstruck, you know? And like yeah, it was interesting, like because I did obviously get to meet him later, and I just remembered like just be cool. And I was a little starstruck, but it was like less than that. It was like seeing him on stage. Yeah. I was almost more starstruck just seeing him in his element on stage for the first time. This was the first time I'd ever sort of laid eyes on him in person. Yeah. And like that was definitely, and the whole band in general, because at the time I was obsessed with Dream Theater. Yeah. And probably the Meshuggah guys too. Like the first time I ever saw Meshuggah live, and I totally punished Frederick outside their bus, like back when they played Jackson, like 2005. Sorry about that, guys. But you know, like that I was definitely starstruck for that too. Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
that's nice. Like, well, a lot of grown adults have gently wept to dream theater. Like I've
Yeah.
seen, like, then that's beautiful. Like, it's
Not
good.
me though. Not me. I was the one. I was the one. I had something in my eye
Yeah,
that people
that was
at
fine.
all when they did A Change of Seasons as a damn encore.
Yeah,
That's right. It was a 26-minute long song as their encore on like a 2.5-hour set. It was one of the most epic shows I ever saw. Massey Hall,
yeah.
2005 Train of Thought tour. Yeah, I'll never forget that show.
That's
Incredible.
beautiful. Yeah. Did it make you want to be a musician? You were already making music at that point.
I was making music at that point, but like it definitely galvanized any feeling. I was like, that's what I want to do. I didn't know a band could sound so good live. I was like, I want to sound that good. I remember it like wasn't too loud, which I loved. I felt like I was listening to like just the right volume because it was loud and powerful. It was in this theater, very, very good sounding theater. And then like it showed me what was possible because it was like, man, a band can sound that good. I never heard a band sound that good live, playing such insanely technical music to where you could hear the detail, which often I feel gets lost. And it set this bar of like, not only do I want to do this, but this is the level I aspire to do this at someday, you know?
And there's a lot of experimentation with Dream Theater. Like they went a lot of different places in their time.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because the Train of Thought album, I think it was like right when they were like in their 40s or whatever. And they're like, let's make a metal record. So they like made a really heavy record for them. And I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it translated really well live, you know? Like that was like, after all these years of being like proggy or whatever, we're gonna go like kind of metal on this one. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that they know the fans will follow them.
Yeah, they're also the kind of band. Yeah, they've kind of crossed that threshold. They could do whatever they want, and they'll be fine. You know, they have nothing left to prove. You know.
Do you feel like that way with Periphery? Do you feel like you can go anywhere you want, or?
I don't think it matters because like we're just gonna do it anyways, and if it takes our career, like all right, we had a good run. It's kind of look like there's not really any money in it. The only reason to do it is like passion and love. So we're just gonna keep doing it, and if people keep listening to it, then that's great. Then I guess we get to keep having our career, and if following our dreams and continuing to follow our dreams is what tanks the band, then whatever. We had a good run, you know. But there's literally no reason to do it other than that, in my opinion, and to do exactly what you want to be doing. And we've taken many steps over the years to ensure that we can do that exactly what we want with as little resistance as possible. You know, that's very important.
Yeah, you've built like a whole entrepreneurial thing around that band and like other income streams and all that kind of stuff to kind of keep it pure and whatever. Was there ever an artist that you were a fan of that you saw do that and were quite smart about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, like Steve Vai, for example, and even John Petrucci. I'm just gonna keep on bringing him up, like with their signature models, finding out some of the finer details of like what those deals looked like. Like, I mean, this is just a rumor. It doesn't really matter if it's true or not because it did sort of inform like what I was looking for. But like, for example, between the two of them, I think Steve Vai had some sort of deal where like he could have the only 7-string on with Ibanez, and if anybody else wanted to have a signature 7-string, a signature that is, someone else wanted to have it, he would have to approve it, and he would get points on it. And I was like, that's so clever, right? And as I understand it, that's what made John Petrucci leave Ibanez, who had a very nice sort of signature model with, or custom with, or I think it was a signature, left for Ernie Ball, which I also took inspiration from this. Like, he was like, I'm going to come to a company that doesn't really cater to my demographic. And they make very good guitars, but I'm going to make them do a unique model for me. And I'm the only one who's got that shape. And I'm going to work with this brand. We're going to grow together. Yeah. And that's why I went to Jackson. It was very inspired by sort of both Steve Vai and John Petrucci on the business side, where I was kind of looking at, like, that's why Jackson, for many reasons, made a lot of sense for me. Yeah.
Well, it's good to, I mean, as I said, it keeps it a bit pure, like when you can work out ways to leverage it and then take it outside what you're doing creatively.
Well, because now Periphery is a passion project. There was a point in time where I had no option other than to care about the financial side and to pay attention to it. And after every show, I'm like, how much did we do per head on merch? And like, how's this tour looking? And how soon before we're in the black, you know, or are we even going to be in the black? And it was just all this stress that really stopped me from enjoying it for what it is. I'll say, like, we never let it affect the music and the writing, but it did affect everything else to a point where it just caused a lot of stress and made it very hard to enjoy. And now I could treat it really like a passion project, and there's no pressure for anything else. So it could go back to being what it was, because when I first started Periphery, it was because it was fun. It wasn't, and yeah, there were dreams to be a big band, but it was never about money. The money was a means to an end. But it was really about just being able to write and play and that whole thing. And for that to sort of come full circle, and now Periphery, like, I don't know how much money Periphery makes, and I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter anymore. So like, we could just enjoy it for what it is. We could tour how we want. We can release records how we want through our own label. It allows the music to stay very, very pure for us, and the process to be very sacred. Yeah.
Well, that's important. Like, okay, harsh left turn. Nirvana, Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
We've spoken before, and you randomly mentioned that, and I'm kind of interested to go deep on that. What, how did they affect you?
So Nirvana was actually probably the first band that sort of incepted the idea of like, hey, what if you were in a band? You know, I liked Michael Jackson and all that. I love the music, but it never, in the same way that watching him dance didn't make me want to dance, I was just like, I just enjoy this. Nirvana was the first time I was like, oh, maybe I could do this. Like, that would be cool. Wow, this band's life seems awesome. This seems like the perfect setup. I loved the fact that like Dave Grohl, you know, this was already well after, like, you know, Kurt Cobain had died, I think. Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, you were young to like,
I was like 13 when I discovered Nirvana.
Yeah.
So that would have been
a few years after he died.
Yeah, a few years after he died. And I think Foo Fighters had already become a thing. And I think I just had this awareness that like Dave Grohl was a drummer, because I wanted to be a drummer and I started on drums.
Yeah, right.
But I was like, oh, Dave Grohl's this drummer who can also play guitar and he can also sing, you know? And it kind of just, again, like created this awareness of like, oh, you can do all these things, you know? I didn't know that. Of course, why would I ever think that anyone could do that? It was insane to me that like a drummer could also then just play guitar. And could sort of master all these instruments. And all of that. So Nirvana and all of that just kind of opened the door to that. That's what made like rock, and they weren't metal, but like rock and heavier stuff cool. Where I kind of want to do that. I feel like that's doable all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, well, I guess they were heavy on some level. Like, he was like an amazing pop songwriter. I read this great thing ages ago where someone said he writes pop songs and gives them edge. No, or he writes kind of, I totally don't remember the quote. He writes pop songs and gives them edge, and Metallica writes like metal songs but gives them sort of a pop sensibility or something like that, which I thought was kind of an interesting.
I agree. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. I mean, he's like full on screaming in some songs, and there's some pretty, they came from like kind of a punk background, you know? So like there's some of that edge to them. And I think I always liked that. I always liked that sort of heavier side. I didn't know what I was looking for at the time. You know, it's like you don't know what you're looking for until you find it, kind of, with music. Especially, I was the oldest. Like, it was a friend who was visiting from Australia, of all places, actually, who was showing me his CD collection, and he had a whole bunch of stuff he was showing me. And I kept asking for like heavier stuff. I didn't know how to say. I want it to be louder, you know. And he was showing me like AC/DC, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. He's like, they're the loudest band in the world. And I'm like, no, that's not quite what I mean. You know, didn't really have like the lexicon to kind of describe what I was looking for. You know, that's always the difficulty. Is all these things are abstractions, anyways. Looking for something so abstract, you don't really have the words to describe it. So I was just kind of navigating until I found stuff, and I had to do it through like CDs that like friends would show me and whatever. Like, this is kind of, that's more like what I'm looking for, you know?
How did you see the musical world when you were 15 years old? Because I feel like that's kind of a formative moment. And like, did you have posters on your wall? Did you dress a certain way? Did you like, were you
I think when I was 15, I was like really into nu metal. You know, I was really, that was my thing. I had all the nu metal records. I was really into Korn and like Limp Bizkit. I think I had a Creed CD. It was just like all the stuff. I think I had a Kid Rock CD. Like, you know, I was just trying to find anything. And there's heavier stuff I could have discovered. And I had like Hit Parader and like, yeah, I had stuff up on my walls. I was just trying to like find what I liked. I really liked Marilyn Manson, Antichrist Superstar. I thought that was a great record.
That's awesome. And like, obviously he's being revealed as a piece of shit, but that record, because I think Trent Reznor, yeah, let's not keep going down this path, but like he yeah, that was like, I believe, one of the albums that Trent Reznor produced, when Trent Reznor was like, I just want to have a good time with this, like Nine Nails is cool, but I'm just going to have fun with this silly clown. And like, you know, that was,
I mean, I think that record was really, really important to me. I loved it. Like, there was a point in time where Marilyn Manson was my favorite artist. And like, I actually still have the book I bought, like his biography. I'm just saying, like, if you ever had questions about him being kind of a piece of shit, just read that book, you know, like it's all there. It's not a secret, you know?
It's not a mystery. Like, it was very much laid out. I've read the book.
I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm just saying, read that book if you're ever curious. But
it's some dark stuff. But you know, this was the style at the time, like in the 90s. This was kind of
it was shock rock, and I just think the aesthetic of that I remember, like, I was bummed out by everything that came out after that because it never really captured that sort of edge or whatever. And I guess it must be Trent Reznor, because that guy is it's pretty hard for him to miss, you know. That guy's got a very good sense of everything, and especially in that era, I think he had a lot to play.
That was kind of peak Reznor, if you will.
It really was. Or at least that genre, because I like what he's doing now with the soundtrack stuff, and I really love his aesthetic. But it's like definitely a different thing. I think I can't imagine that he's the same person. Like, the dude's like a multi-millionaire. Like, he's probably got a very happy life, very like balanced. He's probably just a dude now who writes music. Back then it was like all edgy, figuring himself out, and that comes out in the music. So, you know,
like maybe it was Downward Spiral. I remember reading that he didn't have a place to live. Like, he actually legit didn't have a home. He was just on tour for a year and a half and was just like pretty dark as a result. It's not like good for your soul.
But like you could definitely tell there's darkness when you listen to that. Like, that album doesn't come from a happy, balanced person. Rarely.
Now, like, he's a happy family man, and like Atticus Ross probably tempered his darkness and stuff. Like, Atticus Ross is like a super accomplished producer, engineer.
I think the stuff he's doing now like has his sound, but works very well. Like, I like the soundtrack stuff that he does a lot. I think it's got such a unique edge. Like, it's now to a sound where like I've definitely listened, or I've definitely watched movies kind of not realizing they did the soundtrack, being like, this sounds kind of Nine Inch Nails-ish. It's like, oh yeah, Trent Reznor did that's why, you know? Like, I like that. I think that's awesome that he's got this kind of very distinct brand.
Yeah. Do you really, like, how did you, like, as a producer and stuff, do you feel like you created a very distinct brand? Because you can't not hear you in stuff. Like, you can't not hear you. Like, you know, even 4 seconds or whatever, like, you can hear you.
But in the same way that everyone does, you know, like, everyone has their own voice and whatever. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. It's just, this is my take on something. I don't necessarily think that it's a good or a bad thing. I just think it just is. And maybe for some people it's good, maybe for some people it's bad. But I think eventually, when you do music long enough, you sort of find your tendencies and your habits and your instincts, and that is what your sound is, like, sort of the things you gravitate towards. And some people may hate that, you know. That's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, in my opinion. But there's something there. I have a sound. I think I'm always trying to break out of it because it sounds a bit predictable to me. But like, I think I'll always somewhat have my tendencies, and there's always gonna be things that my ears kind of perk up to.
Totally. There's how did you find electronic music? Like, did this be kind of an interesting hard right turn if at that point you were feeling that, or if that kind of came later?
Oh, I've always had an appreciation, and I'd say even to this day, I'm not as well versed in electronic music as I'd like to be. It's like kind of overwhelming. It's its own scene. I've always loved it aesthetically. I think as early as like playing like you know, the Need for Speed video games, the early Need for Speed 1 and 2 video games, that had like, I guess they hired these guys to do these like kind of like drum and bassy, like jungle kind of techno, like what we don't use the techno anymore, but like what would really be called
people
techno.
do. That's just having a resurgence here. Like during the lockdown, like there's been all this whole underground scene happening that's completely illegal, which is interesting. Yeah. It's quite novel, and all these 20-year-old kids who like weren't around when it happened the first time, which is kind of fascinating to watch.
Just kind of rediscovering it and bringing it back. Yeah, I've been kind of like rediscovering my fascination with drum and bass lately, because like because I used to love that stuff too, but I didn't listen to artists. It's just whatever was kind of thrown at me. And I think as you sort of produce music and become more aware of how the sausage is made, it can kind of ruin your enjoyment of it. Just because you start to get very analytical. But I think I always had this pure enjoyment of electronic music because of my lack of understanding of how it was made. So I could just kind of enjoy it for what it was. And then ironically, that made me go like, oh, I wonder like if I could try to make it. And now I know a little bit how the sausage is made. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it, but it's something I enjoy messing around with. And like, it's it doesn't ruin my enjoyment as much as it does for like metal and rock and stuff like that, which is kind of hard to listen.
It's interesting you say that, because I have the same experience. For me, like metal on some level is work, and I can't stop listening to it in a certain way. And I listen to so much of it, and I can't read a rock biography ever again for pleasure. I can't, like, it's just not a thing. Whereas I think what's interesting about like drum and bass, like for example, is there is a great deal of complexity to it. Like probably that more than most other electronic music. And I do like it when the rhythm section wins. Which is what that's an example of.
That's a good way of putting it. And I think that's why I really gravitated towards that and like IDM and stuff like that, where there's this focus on complexity, technique, but done in like a classy way, not just for the sake of it, but done in like a very musical and creative way. You know, there's artists like, for example, Mr. Bill, who is also Australian. I keep bringing up Australians, but like Mr. Bill is like, you know, he's doing this whole like, I guess it's called like glitch hop thing. So I think he kind of defies a description. He's very prolific, but stuff like that is so fascinating to me because it's working on a very technical level, but the sound design's incredible and it's very aesthetically pleasing and enjoyable to listen to. It's not like you're solving a math equation to listen to it. So,
which you often are otherwise.
Sorry?
Which you often are otherwise in metal. There's math equations.
Right. You could be. You definitely could be in metal. Yeah.
Like Igor Cavallero, for example, does some interesting stuff in electronic music, and you should check out a guy called Drumcore, who has done a lot of like jungly stuff, but now does this sort of glitch hardcore. Like it is hardcore. It's shouting and it's like just go down. But no, I'll send you a thing. It's like it's really interesting, and it's like a different kind of music, and coming from a drum and bass place and now kind of re-embracing hardcore roots, and like coming from a place where like listened to Converge and grew up in Boston and saw that whole thing. I just think it's really interesting what a whole generation of artists have done who kind of grown up where this stuff has come up, like from new metal to, you know, even prog. Prog's an interesting thing. Like it's kind of endured. Do you think prog has ever been in the forefront? It's almost like it's just always been.
I don't think metal's been in the forefront, really.
Yeah.
There've been certain metal bands that kind of have crossed that threshold.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it's kind of, I think it's bigger than it's ever been, maybe, and more accepted than it's ever been, but still just kind of this subculture thing. And then, you know, by extension, prog is just, you know, they're the nerds they're the nerds of the nerds. It's I think if anything, prog was probably more prominent like in the 70s and 80s, where people were sneaking it into pop. You know, you listen to bands like Steely Dan and you're like, this is some wild shit, you know. This is, like, these chord changes are just fusion. They're just fusion chord changes, but this is a pop song. How did you get away with this? You listen to, you know, like what Pink Floyd was doing, and like a lot of these bands, or even Toto, like bands like that would sneak their musicianship in these packages that are very palatable. It's kind of genius. But that was probably like where it was the most accessible. People didn't realize So what does that say? That like for it to be popular, people have to like it has to be like sort of snuck in. Like you can't actually tell people because if they knew what they were listening to, they'd be like, "Ew, no, no way."
Yeah.
No.
I won't have a bar of that. No, that's for naughty boys. I'm not. Yeah, I think.
It's kind of a death sentence, and
Yeah.
death is a death sentence too. So prog death. Oh, sorry guys, you make
Yeah.
the best music, but I'm so sorry.
Like, I'm sorry, it's just not a thing.
It's just for me.
What was the first music you had a strong reaction to that wasn't love? You're just like, I just can't. I'm not having a bar of this.
Wait. The first time I had a strong reaction to that wasn't what?
Wasn't love. Like, was like, I can't hack this. I don't want a bar of it. I don't want to hear it again.
Bands.
Pardon?
The first time I heard Meshuggah, I was like, fuck this. This is just noise, random noise. I wanted to like make fun of it. I was just like, why does it? Because I remember, and I had this really stupid logic where I was like, oh, if you know, I was young. I was like, if a band's really good, I guess I'll have heard of them. You know, like I guess they'll be in a magazine or whatever. I always saw people talk about Meshuggah and like talk like so reverently about Meshuggah, but I never checked them out, and it was hard to check out bands back then. So I was just like, whatever, I'll spend my money elsewhere. What a stupid mistake that was, by the way. If I could go back and smack myself. But you know, I think I heard like some stuff off of Chaos Fear, and I was like, this is noise. I probably heard like Concatenation, and that just does sound like noise if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And the other band, and this was after I got into Meshuggah, the other band that I had the same reaction to, I was like, and I remember thinking like, okay, I get the thing with Meshuggah, but this will never click with this band. Fuck this band, was the Dillinger Escape Plan. I was just like, this is actually just noise now. Now I'm educated. I know about Meshuggah.
Yes.
I understand Meshuggah. This is just random. Fuck this band. This is noise. Why does anyone like it? But in the case of both bands, there was something that kept bringing me back.
Yeah, totally.
And in the case of Meshuggah, it was understanding that everything was actually 4/4. There was actually this crazy order, this like very rigid order to what sounded like chaos. And I was like, oh my God, this is the most genius thing I've ever heard. In the case of Dillinger, it was that there was no order. And like, there was just something so visceral about it. And then I saw their live shows online or whatever, and I saw them live, and I was like, oh, this is just one of the greatest bands that will ever exist. Like,
totally. And it's like they're a really funny band. Like their first album, like their bass player got paralyzed, you know, like all of this stuff happened, and Ben wrote the whole thing. Like the first album, he just wrote, he's like, well, what else am I gonna do? This is what I have to do. And then like I've seen him stomp on people's heads, and you know, like jump off a speaker. And
I think Ben is a musical genius.
Yeah.
I don't really see that word get thrown around with him, and like people associate him with like, you know, the violence of like and the visceral nature of a Dillinger show, but like compositionally, some of the stuff that's going on, it's crazy because you could kind of tell that he doesn't know what he's doing and he's just going for it.
Yeah.
His instincts and his tendencies. Like, I think that guy's a musical genius.
That's awesome.
I genuinely think that guy is like, actually, for as much praise as that band gets, like Ben is kind of underrated as a musical genius. Like people think he's like just a guitarist or just, you know, and like I actually think that guy is like one of the greatest musical minds in like modern metal and all that.
That's a big call. Well, no one sounds like Dillinger. Oh, I guess people try.
That is why. There's so many bands that try, and you can do Dillinger-esque stuff, but it's the everything else. This is like compositionally and melodically, he's doing some stuff that is so clever and so unique and so cool. And I feel like that's some of the stuff that gets slept on with Dillinger because everyone loves the chaos and it's the catchiest thing to sort of remember about them. But it's their melodies and it's like the actual flow of the compositions, and that's also the aspect that I think really got refined over time. That you hear getting better. Like I hear a guy who's trying to improve over every record, like really, really trying, and like doesn't have like traditional tools.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that guy's like absolutely brilliant as a musician.
What song would you introduce people to that band with?
I think Panasonic Youth is probably a pretty safe bet. There's something weirdly catchy about that song. And it's kind of like it's kind of like the rebirth of that band in a way, you know, because I love Calculating Infinity, and that was kind of like what got me into that band was Calculating Infinity. And there's this very raw characteristic, but it's almost too raw. It's very unrefined, you know. Like, as I understand it, it was like kind of recorded like mostly in one take, which is insane, but like it all also sounds like that. Like, I feel like Greg coming into the band and just adding this whole other dimension to it, and him obviously being like a big fan of like Mike Patton and Trent Reznor, I think was really good, like injecting those elements into that, and that worked really well with Ben's writing and a lot of stuff Ben was doing, and him experimenting with a lot of electronic stuff. Like that album in general is probably one of the better starting points. It used to be my favorite album, but I'm going to revise that and say I think One of Us Is the Killer may be the best album to get into Dillinger with. Yeah. Maybe.
It's a cool way to go out, man.
What?
It's a cool way to go out.
That wasn't their last album.
No.
It was a Disassociation.
Right.
It was. Which is a good album, but One of Us Is a Killer, just that one, that's the one that hits me the right way. Yeah. And I also think like, so Panasonic Youth, to introduce someone to Dillinger and freak them out just the right amount to get them into it. But if you're like, listen to a whole album, I guess Miss Machine could work really well for that too. But like, I really find that One of Us Is the Killer is probably the best of what Dillinger has to offer on one single album.
How does it affect you going into Periphery when this is something that you really connect with? Like, how does it affect the way you produce and write music? Like, it's a really interesting thing that you connect so deeply with that.
It doesn't on any active level. I'm sure on like some subconscious level it affects things. You know, the thing to think about. I think once you start to play live, you start to write a little bit differently because, and I'm sure I'm far from the first person to say this, but you start to learn like how crowds react to stuff and like what stuff works. It's always really disappointing when you write a song and you think it's going to translate a certain way and it doesn't. And it's always a pleasant surprise when like a song that you're like, yeah, I don't really see much out of it, and then it translates. So I think you're always just trying to like balance that as well. It's like, I'd like this to be a good live song because I want to perform these songs. And there are aspects where you like watch another band live and be like, I remember that moment live. Like as an audience member, I liked the intensity of that, or I like the way that felt. I'd like to try to recreate that. So that might be more of an influence, is like how it interacts on that level. But like compositionally, there's too much going on like on instinct. So if there's anything that's affecting it, it's buried very deep and I wouldn't be able to recognize it. Of course there's influence. I adore these bands and they're hitting a lot of the sounds that I want to hear. So there will be similarities. I mean, my Periphery is just a Meshuggah cover band anyways, but like
it's a good one, man. It's a good one.
Yeah, but like but on a deeper level, it's just kind of reacting to stuff. So I don't really know what's going on there, but like if there's ever something that I'm thinking about, it's maybe a moment that happened live, either with something that we did or something where I saw a band live and I was like, oh, I remember that moment. I want to see if we can recreate that feeling, you know?
Totally. What was the first like Periphery song where you saw like a reaction that was like hella bigger than what you would thought it would be?
It's a good question. The first album, I feel like people kind of slept on us. They didn't really like it. And it wasn't until we put out our second album that like we started to see a fan base. Maybe like Scarlet, funny enough. We have this song, it's kind of rock, it's kind of upbeat. We don't tend to do a lot of songs like that. And it was actually originally a Haunted Shores idea, but Mark joined the band and it just fit really well. And Spencer wrote like amazing vocals for it. It's one of those songs that just came together very well and has always worked well live. It was the first time I ever saw like people singing along, really like singing along to like a whole song. And then off of that album, probably like a song like Ragnarok, which was heavy. And like, I remember just being a big deal if we could get a mosh pit during a show, you know? And that was like one song where it was like, oh yeah, we could probably get these guys to mosh.
Yeah.
And yeah, like songs off that album, like Make Total Destroy did pretty well too. That was probably that era where like I finally saw like crowds reacting to us in a positive way. Before that, they're just kind of either standing there or just waiting for our set to be over.
It's so dark, man.
That was the beginning of Periphery. Like that, I didn't care. I was just stoked to be on stage. But we had people, some crowds hated us. Like really. I remember one time we played in Vegas. We were playing, on a festival tour. I think, Asking Alexandria was headlining for like 2 of 11 bands, in the middle of the day. And like there were people, there's this big pit and there were people sitting in it, arms crossed with their backs to us. We had a 25-minute set and it felt like an hour. And then like halfway through our 25-minute set, half the crowd just walked away. And I remember like, it was like pretty undeniable. What was cool is like, we've always been kind of a band's band. So we were always friends with the other bands and they were watching us. They were kind of seeing it happen. And after the show, they were just like, well, I thought it was sick, dude. Like they're being really nice about it. They're being really sweet about it. But it was like undeniably like that crowd fucking hated us.
Yeah. Well,
thanks, Vegas.
Asking Alexandria is a hard left to on Periphery.
Yeah. No. And back then, especially like, progressive metal or gent or whatever was not cool. That was not cool at all. Now it's like a thing, but back then no one gave a shit. So like they especially didn't give a shit about us. Like when the style of music that we were playing was just not at all what they wanted to hear. Yeah.
Was there a moment where it changed?
Yeah, I think around Periphery 2. And I don't really understand why. But like Periphery 2 is like where people started to accept us and then started to accept our first album retrospectively.
Yeah.
Because when our first album came out, everyone's like, whatever, 5 out of 10. And then when Periphery 2 came out, people were talking about it with this reverence that we'd never seen. And it was like, oh yeah, it's such a great album. I'm like, where were you guys? Like, yeah. And so maybe we're just a slow burn. We're a slow burn band, that's just
well, it keeps burning, so that's that's a good thing. You don't want to like.
We're kind of this slow and steady thing. We have a good foundation. We have very loyal fans, So I'm definitely not complaining about that. I'll just say those first few years were pretty rough.
Yeah.
But at the time, I think I was just so excited to be out on the road. I didn't actually care.
Well, that's a good way to be. What have been like some memorable interactions with your fans? Has anyone like gotten a Misha back piece? I mean, that's like that maybe
tattooed. People have tattooed like I've signed their arm. I'm gonna get a tattoo of that, and they've sent me the tattoo. I'm like, you're insane.
It is still insane, but cool.
I have a bad memory. There's been a lot of years of touring.
Yeah,
it's been over a decade, and there's been a lot of crazy things that have happened.
Yeah.
One time I remember we played. This is a few years back. We played a venue that was much too big for our crowd. Spencer invited the entire crowd up on stage and there was kind of a party. So that was cool. I can't think of too many. I mean, our fans have done lots of really nice things for us and sometimes intense things and sometimes weird things, but I can't think of anything.
It's just happened a lot. It's been a whole thing.
Let's
talk about Haunted Shores because that new album's awesome. It's a great time.
Did you hear it?
It's a great time. Yeah. It's a great time.
Oh, awesome. I'm really proud of that album.
It's a great time. Yeah, that's my review. It's a great time.
Sweet. I'll accept that review. That's awesome.
What did you bond over? Like, what did you bond over? Like making that? Like, what did you guys listen to that you were like that kind of felt like?
It's not that we're listening to anything. It's more that we're just getting stuff out.
Yeah.
Periphery won't and can't do like any death or black metal stuff, just mainly like that's not Matt's style of drumming, and to play this kind of stuff you kind of need a very specific kind of drummer to play a different style, and there's a sort of speed limit that we hit, and Matt hates playing blast beats, so we try to limit it. He's a good sport when we program. He'll even say, he's like, if it sounds good, if it fits the part, he'll do it. And so we do have blast beats and stuff like that, but it's always in context. But like Mark and I would always, Haunted Shores was a project that like we sort of rescued because everyone in his band kind of quit for various reasons, and he wanted to keep it as a studio project. He actually hired me to produce it, and then we found we had good writing chemistry, and we just kind of went from there. Eventually, like after he joined the band, it's like we should just do an album. So we did the first EP album, Viscera, whatever it is. I guess it's technically an EP, and like and that was a lot of fun, and it just felt like kind of getting out all the stuff that we're not really allowed to do with Periphery, either because we can't play it, or Matt can't play it, or none of us can play it. It's like to write music without this responsibility of having to ever play it live, kind of freeing. And to also, you know, like when you're in a band, you have to interact. We're a democracy. Everyone's equal, so everyone has input or whatever. So just having a thing where it's just me and him, we're just bouncing back and forth. It's very quick. It's very quick to write stuff. It was just a change of the procedure. And I want to be careful here because like I'm making it maybe sound like being in Periphery is limiting or that I don't like it, but that's not true. But it allows me to exercise this muscle that we don't really get to exercise with Periphery. So we get to have our cake and eat it. So that it's supposed to be like over the top, extreme, like almost hilariously so.
Yeah, well, I guess it's less so like limiting than like you have a certain palette of colors. Like you have a certain palette and that's what you have to paint with in Periphery. And there's like olive green and like fuchsia and like some weird ass colors that don't go in a Periphery painting.
Right. That's a good way.
And that's okay. Like it's fine. Like it's
but
fine.
now we also get to use these colors on the palette that we haven't really gotten to touch that much, you know, and it's very fulfilling. It's also why I have an electronic project with Jake, because that also allows us to explore. Because I just like writing. I just really like writing. I don't even care that much about the final product, you know. I just really like the process of writing and feeling like we're writing a song and seeing it get completed. So it was just really enjoyable to like write this stuff with Mark.
Cool. What's your relationship with extreme music, like extreme metal, and also like screaming, growling, singing versus singing?
I think like I always liked both. I was just kind of picky about the style, but like it's probably expanded and evolved. But you know, like hearing Slipknot when I was younger or whatever, I was like, yeah, like this is awesome. This is so intense, you know. And then getting to bands like Opeth, which, you know, they do both so well. Like Michael has a wonderful singing voice and that has like one of the best death growls. Like he might have converted me to the death growl with Opeth, where I'm like, oh, I get it, you know?
Yes.
Like you hear like, whoa, okay, I understand why you like this. You know,
Chuck from Death is like a generation above you. That he was that guy for like so many people. You know, like it's an interesting thing. What do you think it does to people that's different between the two styles?
Well, it's interesting because it becomes a rhythmic device. It's almost akin to rapping in a way.
That's
where you're using the voice purely as a rhythmic device.
Yeah.
And maybe some tone to it, but that's very minimal. And it's not necessarily interacting musically or melodically. Whereas when you have a voice, you have like a melody layer and it has to interact. And it also means that like sometimes you can have vocals over very busy stuff without crowding it because you're not adding another melody layer over very busy stuff.
That's interesting.
But I do think that in the same way that it loses the melodic aspect, it allows it to emphasize the rhythmic aspect when done correctly. And if you listen to songs like Corridor of Chameleons or Neurotica by Meshuggah, I mean, Jens is basically rapping.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't sound cheesy and he's screaming or growling over the whole thing. It's actually really effective, but it's using it as another rhythmic layer to play with. I've always liked that a lot. So I'm very picky with that kind of stuff. And that's what I like. And then also just adds another dimension of intensity. You know, if used correctly, the same part can just be that much more heavy.
And it's important to like to be picky about that stuff because there are a lot of pale imitators that just don't really understand the complexity of it or like use it as a tool effectively. Like there's a lot of people who suck. Not to be
I mean, I don't want to say, you know, it's because it's just my taste at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
well, it's mine too. I'm thinking about that.
Who's objectively great. But yeah, it is very personal. It seems to be a very personal. Everything in metal is very personal. And it's interesting because we kind of debated like whether we should have vocals. I think like we wrote music that actually would be well suited to vocals. But I think we'd have to sort of find the right vocalist, and maybe we will do that down the line with Haunted Shores. But I also know I've heard so many times, can't tell you how many times, and I bet you've heard this too, where you'll show someone a band that you love and they're like, wow, that's amazing. I'd really love it if it wasn't for that vocalist, you know? like some death metal band where it's just growling or whatever.
Yeah.
And like Haunted Shores would be very suited to just growling, or maybe occasional say, but it would be like 90% growling.
Okay.
So I was like, it might be cool to have like the one band where that's a non-issue. Now, I think some people are really looking for those vocals too, and I don't think they would be out of place.
Yeah.
Something I played, but I did think it would actually be pretty cool to like do that super extreme, because there's some pretty full-on stuff, but just instrumental, and just see how that comes off and how people react to it.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like it for what it is.
Yeah. Do you look at online reviews and like reception and like Reddit and?
Yeah, I know I shouldn't, but I love torturing myself, and I'm an insecure asshole. So like, you know, it's just right for the hole, you know.
how do you not, like, in some level, like especially like with a studio only project, like you're not going to get live feedback, so this is where it's going to live.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an artist, and most artists are just little bitches, and I'm no exception. So
looking for validation, you can't stop. Like, it's what are you going to do? Be honest.
I look at the comments and I ignore the 100 good ones and I focus on the one bad one. So
what are you going to do?
But I think I've gotten better about that stuff over time.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
But yeah, I think I try not to look at that stuff as much anymore, because I just, you know, it's weird because the goal when writing it is really just for myself, and then it's like kind of the train stops and you're looking for something else. Like the album's done and you're like, I'm looking for something else. I want to keep feeling what I was feeling. So it's like kind of a way to keep being in that headspace or that moment of creating the album in a weird way, is by like reading comments and vicariously experiencing it through people who are listening to it for the first time, which I think is kind of cool. But then of course, like the you know, the bad comments, if they're like kind of out of line or stupid, they don't really do anything. But if there's like a bad comment, I'm like, they might have something there, or like they might have a point, then that can hurt.
I do the same thing with this YouTube channel. Like, what are you going to do? Like,
oh man, YouTube comments are the worst though.
But I have to say, the Revolver audience is mad nice. Like,
really?
They've been really nice to me the whole time. I'm not going to say this because someone's going to come in and just be like, you suck. You're garbage. But they're like,
that's actually great. That's great. If that's
a hard audience to please. Like, they would have torn me apart from day dot if if they felt like it. Then I'm not saying people don't do that, but it's like, it's nice to be embraced by like people to go, do thing and garbage. Anyway, your musical Mount Rushmore, who would you have as the faces carved in the stone? And I just want to say, I want to get these carved. I want this to be some weird rock place where people like tour through them. But maybe Dolly Parton would hook that up. She's got the means. I think that'd be weird.
Oh, let's put Alan Holdsworth on there.
Yep. Why is that?
Because he's just that dude with something else, man. That guy, I know he's not metal, but like he influenced so much metal. You wouldn't have Meshuggah without Alan Holdsworth.
Yep.
And that guy like would look at music so differently. Like talk about a guy who no one can actually copy his style. Like I think it's pretty much impossible. And I saw him a couple of times and it was just like mind blowing. You gotta have to put like Frederick Thorndahl up there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
He's one of my biggest influences of all time.
Yep.
That's two of that. God, this is hard. This is hard. I don't know. I guess let's put you know what? Let's just go with like guitarists that I like.
Go on.
Influential. So we'll put John Petrucci and Guthrie Govan up there as well.
That's a lot of guitar. Like
all the guitars. It's all the guitars, but you know what? There, I've said my piece.
You play guitar. You got 3 guitars in your band. Like, you're not messing around.
Yeah, I'm not. It's clear. You're
not messing around. Like,
so, I'm really bad at those kinds of things, unfortunately. So
you did it good, dude. You came out quickly. Like, it's good. Which song do you wish you wrote?
Oh man, I have a good one, but it's like no one's ever heard it.
That's okay. People look it up, man. You people are,
FAUXTALES. I think he's from Denmark. I forget where. Some rando scando, and he's this song called Atlas is like perfect, and it's totally the kind of melody I would have written, but I totally didn't. And I wish I had. I'm like, God damn, it's so simple and so perfect. And I just wish I wrote that. And it would have been in my wheelhouse to do it, but I was just too slow and too stupid to do it. And like, I don't know. I feel like I missed out on that. It's perfect. That melody is perfect.
Awesome. I think people should look it up. Like, you know,
that band is amazing, by the way.
Yeah.
Like Bowtails.
Yeah.
Like they kind of started off like electronic dubsteppy, and I've kind of gone into this more orchestral kind of indie rock things, because like he with electronic elements, because he'll do like he did these live renditions. He did a live rendition of that song, which is insane, and it's with like a guitarist and a drummer or whatever, but the real song is just electronic. So it's like, I recommend that. I kind of wish I'd written that song. And then
there's still time to write something.
There's another one, Telephone Tel Aviv. What's the song called? Why am I blanking? It's off map of What's Effortless.
Yeah. Awesome.
Is it?
People look it up. Like, you know, people looking for stuff. People looking for stuff to look at.
I think it's just map of what is effort. Yeah, map of what is effortless, I think.
Sick.
Check real quick. That is what it is. Yeah. I wish I wrote that. I want to I want to write a song someday that affects me the way, or affects other people the way that song affected me. That song is perfect.
Well, okay. These two might play into final question that we always do, which is 5 songs that change your life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
5 songs that changed my life. I guess Smells Like Teen Spirit. That probably changed my life. Sick by Slipknot. The first track, I was like, what?
Metal kid.
I didn't know that you could do that.
Awesome.
Can the whole album of Chaosphere be on there?
Yes.
But we'll go with Concatenation if not, because that was like the first probably Meshuggah song where it like clicked.
Yeah.
What song off of Scenes from Memory? What song would it be? What song?
That's your thinking music. That means weird.
Let me see. I have to, if I look at the track list. What song? Ah, man, so many to choose. This is tough. Let's go with the whole album of Scenes from Memory. Maybe Fatal Tragedy, like hearing that was pretty. I was like, what? That's solo?
Yeah.
And that's the first time. Was that 2 more left?
I think 1. Can I add up?
I can't count.
Got it either.
Yeah, Sugar Coated Sour.
Yeah.
By Dillinger. Again, like once that's, I mean, that song, I was like, this sucks. Like, this song sucks. This band sucks. Fuck this band. And then like before I knew it, I was like trying to learn it on drums and guitar, and like just trying to like learn every note of that. You know?
That's beautiful. That's, you know, good on them.
Was that 5? Was that 5?
I think, dude.
Waves by Guthrie Govan.
There we go. You got it.
16 Men of Tane by Alan Holdsworth.
Your 5 songs that change your life goes for like 6 hours.
Yeah, it does.
Which is kind of classical for your stuff.
Above and Below by Alan Holdsworth.
Yeah, it does. It goes for like 5 hours. Which is
The Hindmost by Alan Holdsworth. Okay, yeah, no, sorry. This is the problem. I can't pick 5. There's too many songs. There's just too much music out there.
There's a lot of songs, man. There's heaps of songs.
Too much music. Most of it sucks.
Yeah.
And I'm just making it worse for everybody. So I'm sorry.
That's our quote. That's how we're going out. That's Misha from Periphery. He's got a new thing called Haunted Shores. It's a good ass heavy time. You should get it.
Yeah, listen to our album. It's called Void, and it's a good time. And it's blackened death metal that you can show to your friends without freaking them out too much.
It's just,
And
it's easy listening.
it'll make you smile because it's over the top. It's ridiculous.
It's uneasy listening.
Uneasy. It's uneasy, easy listening.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. It's
I highly recommend it.
Yes.
It'll do you better than a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah, you should start your day with it. Your neighbors will love you.
They will adore you. They will absolutely adore you.
Love you. Yeah, yeah. So that's beautiful. So yeah, thanks for joining us. This is the Fan First podcast. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. That was a good time.